Hey friends, it's been a while since my last video. It's been about a month, I think. I think my last video was about my hair and I cut my hair. And it's August now. It's almost the end of August. It's going to be September, then it's going to be October. I've said this on Twitter already and on Instagram, but I haven't said it on YouTube, which is I'm having a baby soon with my wife. It's a big deal, right? Pretty excited, pretty scared, looking forward to it. And it's part of why I haven't been making videos as much. I have been, focused on planning for the baby, freaking out a little bit about the baby in a good way, trying to get things done, clean the house, move stuff around, which is part of why this is my study where normally you see me sitting in my chair at the back, and now I have my book. I moved my bookcases into the study. What else? I've been thinking a lot about the essays that I'm working on, and I'm wondering if I should use this video to talk about one of the essays that I'm working on, because it occurs to me that I used to think through some of my ideas on my videos by just talking out loud, and it can be frustrating sometimes when I'm trying to think through an idea in text and I feel stuck. And so yeah, let's do it. So one of the ideas is the idea of knottedness, like a Gordian knot, like a rope knot. And the idea is that, when you have a knot, a muscular knot, like a knot in your muscle, right? And again, I'm not a physical therapist. I don't even know that much about muscle tension and all those things. I just a curious nerd who reads about stuff, right? But the interesting thing about some kinds of muscle aches and pains is that simple rest is not enough to make you feel better. Like you might get some symptom relief, for example, but if you have like tight hamstrings from sitting all day every day, just lying down is not going to make you feel better. You're going to have to stretch. You're going to have to get into the knot in a sense, right? If you dynamically move, it takes some kind of movement to resolve the issue. Like rest alone is not enough. And the metaphor that I extended from that is realizing that I believe there are other kinds of knottedness that you can't just resolve through rest. You can't just resolve. So rest again, like rest is important, because if you have some kind of knot in your life, right? I'm thinking, this is me thinking through my own shit. If I have some kind of knot in my life, rest can help avoid making things worse, but it doesn't necessarily make things better. To make things better, you have to identify the knot and you have to get into it and you have to like untangle it, which, there are many different ways different kinds of knots can manifest, and they require different kinds of work to get through them. But the important thing, first of all, is that you even recognize that there is a knot, and that it's like pulling. If you've been pulling or pushing, whatever metaphor you want to use, and it's not working, doing it more and doing it harder is probably not going to help if it hasn't helped so far already. And so you need to stop. So that's where resting helps somewhat. You need to stop and try something different. And I almost think I prefer knottedness as a metaphor for quote unquote writer's block, because I seldom feel blocked. I usually and again, like, I don't know if language is just tricky and has connotations with certain, like we inherit certain connotations with certain words, but I seldom feel blocked. I sometimes feel jammed, which is maybe similar, right? Again, it's like, what are the connotations in your mind when you hear these words, right? And I have a separate, so I'm trying to talk about an essay about knottedness, but I also have this separate essay about language. And the title of that essay is In Other Words. And the idea is that if you don't feel a resonance with some set of words that you're using, try different words, because different connotations, different associations may just feel better in some ways, and then they kind of help you think better or help you consider something you haven't considered before and look at things from a different point of view, try something different. So, and even this, me choosing to make a video, is me addressing my knottedness in my writing and in my essays and in even my videos, I guess, in that whatever I was doing before wasn't really working, right? I had reached the point of diminishing returns. Like, I'm not going to be able to force myself to write something that doesn't seem to be working. There's something wrong in the process somewhere, which is why I'm stuck, which is why I'm knotted, which is why I guess you could say blocked, but I just want to use slightly different language to challenge myself to not think in cliches, right? There are phrases that were originally metaphors. I think Orwell called them like stale metaphors, right? Where the metaphor was once useful in some way, but it's become so commonplace, so vernacular, right? That you don't use it evocatively. It's just a name for a thing, and a name that doesn't feel like anything. And try different names, right? Not necessarily diagnose it differently. So again, diagnosis is one way of framing a problem, one way of thinking about a problem. And I've even been thinking, the word problem, it just means like to throw something, like problem. Like if you look up the etymology of it, problem just means to throw something. And it's actually related to words like hyperbole, which is like to throw something too far. And then we've come to think of problems as like, what is wrong with you? Or what's it's like there's like this moral weight to it, like, oh, I have problems. It's so problematic, right? Like all these the connotations that the word problem acquires makes problems feel more daunting. I think someone on Twitter recently said, people pedestalize their problems and they tremble in fear of them. And so I start thinking, okay, how do I use different language? And I think about, what about puzzles, right? What about mysteries? Like life is full of puzzles. To say that life is full of puzzles and full of mysteries is evocative in a different way than to say life is full of problems, right? And yeah, I think that is an interesting example. Maybe I should merge the two essays. Maybe I should use the In Other Words essay and talk about knottedness inside the In Other Words essay, right? And that's something that I had not quite considered while writing out my drafts, because in the drafts I had separated them as separate ideas. And I'm wondering now if maybe I should try and weave in all of the different sub-essays I have in mind. I have like 7 or 8 different essay drafts. One is about storytelling, one is about In Other Words, one is about knottedness. There's a few others that's not coming to mind right off the top of my head, but maybe I can. Let's go these few, right? Like storytelling, heft, dynamism, the problem of dynamism, meaning the difficulty of expressing how things change in a piece of writing which is static, right? Because the writing does not change. And it's easier to have a conversation with someone, and then when you see that they don't understand something, you can reorient and elaborate and figure stuff out. Whereas if they're not getting it in a piece of writing, the author can't change on the fly. So that's challenging. That's why it took so long with my second book. Even though I know that I'm good at helping people in conversation, but it's much harder to help people in text. And even in video, I feel like it took me a lot of practice to practice speaking on camera in a way that felt like dialogue, I guess. Like I'm carrying both sides of the conversation. I'm talking, and then I'm thinking about what I'm saying, and I am sort of having a conversation with myself. And I've seen people on TikTok, what they do is they face one side of the camera and then they cut to another side of the camera, and it's like they're having a conversation with two parts of themselves. That's another way of doing things, which I don't have the patience to do on YouTube, because I rather just take one takes, but it's doable. So that's the thing to consider. So that's like about framing. So framing is another one of my essay ideas, right? Like that problems often persist because they are misframed. And yeah, so maybe they persist because they're misframed. And so again, like if you could reframe a problem by describing it as a puzzle or a mystery, right? And even just using the exact same phrasing but just changing that word can evoke different feelings. And then you're like, what is the puzzle here? What am I trying to? I'm not necessarily trying to eliminate the problem, right? Make it go away, but I might try to find a different way of navigating it. That's where I'm at. That feels pretty good for a 10-minute video. And I'm just gonna, I want to get back in the swing of publishing regularly videos, right? So I'm just gonna hit stop and publish and maybe leave some comments or whatever. And hopefully, I do think I already have a couple of thoughts for the essay that I want to write. Maybe. We'll see how that goes. Hope you guys are well. Done.